What is going on? So here we are. Uh, this is going to be a short video. All right. So I'm just muting that. Okay, guys. So we're going to be starting this episode in 2 minutes. So hopefully everything's coming through okay. And this episode is going to be just concerning holiday weight gain. And so this is completely out of time, and I'm very aware that we won't have many people watching on live because we don't usually do it at this time. But I felt it was necessary because one of the girls in our transformation program asked for some assistance whilst she goes on holidays. So I thought, what better way to do it than to come on and do a live podcast and give you guys a little bit of value. So we're going to start this one in 1 minute. If you're new to the channel or you're new with us, just get into the comments there and say hello so I can see who you are. Morning, brother. What's going on? We're going to start this one in 30 seconds. And the basics for this one is just talking about holiday weight gain. It's going to be quick fire, no BS, and straight to the point. So I think we are ready to rock and roll. So guys, let's do it on the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs. Now, in today's episode, we're going to do a quick fire episode in how to, what are the simple strategies for limiting holiday weight gain. I've just had a quick brainstorm. I've come up with 10 to 15 simple things. If you could just note down one or two that apply to you, it's going to go a long way to helping you stay on top of things. Look, here's the thing about the holidays. If we understand the mechanics of how we lose or gain weight, it's pretty damn simple, okay? The way we lose or gain weight is that we have an increase in the food side, in the calorie side, and we generally have a decrease in the expenditure side. We don't pay too much attention to things like metabolism in the short term. That's not going to change that quickly. What's really happening is most of us, myself included, have an increase in the calories that we are consuming, a decrease in the calories we're burning because we're standing and sitting in the one spot more. And so for that reason, there can be a little bit of weight gain. Now, I should point out to those of you that jump on the scales and weigh 3, 4, 5 kilos more, this is not all fat. Okay, this is not all fat. And it's important to point that out. The reason it's not all fat is because if you have been eating a pretty, I guess what you'd call clean, high protein, lower carb style of eating for the last couple of months, it's likely that when you hit Christmas and started consuming a few more carbs, what happens is you store those carbs, and with the carbs, we store some water. So let's say that you've put on, 2 to 3 kilos over the last week or two. It's pretty unlikely that that's going to be 2 to 3 kilos worth of fat. It's going to be maybe a kilo of fat, 1.5 kilos of fat, an equal amount of water. And what will happen is after you finish off with your period of which you've indulged a little bit, you'll start to move again. You'll start to get your calories back in check. The weight will come down, and it won't be because you're losing pure fat. It's going to be because, in part, you're going to have a reduction in your stored body water as well. Does that make sense? So we have to understand that changes in the scale weight aren't just fat. So with that aside, we're going to go in. I'm just going to nail for you guys some quick strategies to think about limiting holiday weight gain. The first of these strategies is to back end or front end your calories within a day or within a week. What do I mean by that? Well, I don't know about you guys, but it's pretty easy for me knowing who's coming to our house and where I'm going. It's pretty easy to anticipate when the high calorie days and meals are going to be. So what we can do with that is leverage a high calorie meal or day with a low calorie meal or day. What really matters is the floating average of calories consumed. It's not as if you have an indulgent day and then all of a sudden store a bunch of fat. It doesn't really work like that. Think of it more as like a floating average. So if, for example, you know that you've got a bunch of friends coming round tonight and you guys are going to have some wine and some pizza or whatever it is, my approach would be to have a pretty gentle lunch, have a pretty small breakfast, and I'm going to save my calories for the back end of the day. Equally, I might decide that I'm going to go out for breakfast with a bunch of friends or a bunch of family members. And if I have a big fat 1,000-calorie breakfast, then I'm going to go a little bit lighter at lunch. Okay? This isn't rocket science. It's pretty smart, guys. We can shuttle the calories towards the end or the start of the day to balance them overall. The other thing we can do, as I've discussed at the start, is that we can move them between days. So if, for example, you had a really big Boxing Day, well, then you could do 2 days of slightly lower calories and save yourself up for a bigger couple of days. So for example, it's predictable that on New Year's Eve, you're probably going to have a few drinks, therefore you're probably going to have a few extra calories. So what I would personally do is look at my day and I say, well, it's New Year's Eve. Do I really need to have a massive breakfast? I probably don't, because I know that I'm probably going to be eating from 6 o'clock in the afternoon until midnight, because that's when I'm going to be awake to. And so in that case, I could think about shuttling my calories within that one day. Or I could, for example, say New Year's Eve is going to be a big calorie day. New Year's Day, I'm going to go a lot lighter. Does that make sense? So feel free to move your calories around. The next tip is to stay hydrated. Now, this is hydration is something that people just blow off so quickly, because they don't understand that a lot of the time that they think they're hungry, they're actually thirsty. So thirst is a real appetite, a real appetite encouragement, okay? It's not a suppressant. If, however, you drink fluid, you distend the stomach out, you fill up your digestive system, and it gives the sense to the brain that you're actually full. So if you're filling up with a little bit more of the low calorie or no calorie fluids, it actually helps you control hunger. The key is choosing drinks which are low or no calories. The reason for this is that fluids go, people tend to think I'm talking about alcohol only, but I actually think that the biggest problems for a lot of us are soft drinks and juices. These foods, we just guzzle them down. We don't have to chew them, so they're like hard-lining calories. So what you're better to do is, for me, I have almost like 2 categories of fluids. I have alcohol, right, which I allow for, and I choose the lowest calorie form of alcohol. For example, I don't drink full calorie beers. I drink calories of around 90 calories per beer instead of, say, a Corona that's 150 calories. So I can nearly half the calories by choosing the right beer. That's mostly going to be your low carb options. So I have alcohol, and I have pretty much water or diet sodas, mineral waters. I don't really consume anything in between that, because for me, things like juices and cordials and soft drinks, they're just empty calories that we don't need, and we're going to have to offset that against something I'd prefer to eat. Does that make sense, guys? So next one up is just being a little bit more mindful with your eating. I think what happens is when we get relaxed, we eat in a way that's just very like, just like we've got to throw it down. And we don't actually think about what we're doing. It takes time for the brain to register that the stomach is full. The suggestion is about 15 to 20 minutes. This is the reason why when you smash down a bunch of food quickly, and then 20 minutes later you go, oh my God, I am so full. It's because the brain didn't register that the stomach was already full, and by the time it was full, it was too late. So one of the simplest things you can actually do is just slow down and savor your food. Just take time. Next one up is portion control. It's pretty simple. I don't know about you guys, but when I look at my dinners over the last couple of nights with my family, it's just like there's just food everywhere. There's probably, I'm going to guess, 2 times the amount of food that's actually needed if we were all to eat to satiety. Double. So in other words, we could have double the amount of people and be able to feed everyone. And so when you have that type of environment, it's pretty hard to pull yourself up from just like going bananas, right? Now, if you have a strong metabolism like I do, extra calories tend to, I'm lifting weights, I'm pushing hard, I'm active, they tend to go towards building muscle. But if you haven't trained in the gym a lot and you've got a slow metabolism and then you have large portions, it's going to mean that you're going to end up in a calorie surplus a lot quicker. So you've got to be mindful of going back for seconds or thirds without actually asking yourself, am I hungry or am I full? The next tip is super important, and if you're in our Better Body Academy, you should know this. You know, one of the biggest things, and I've got to get this through better to you women out there, that we give you guys a protein target. If you just forget everything, right? And when I mean this, like forget exercise, forget lifting weights, forget tracking your calories, forget everything. Just do one thing. Just one thing. Hit your protein target in whole natural foods. So what I mean whole natural foods, I mean foods that aren't processed. If you hit your protein target in whole natural foods, what's going to happen is you're going to be blisteringly full because you're going to be consuming foods like meats and fish and beans, foods that are filling by nature. So it's actually really, really difficult to overconsume these foods. Even if you hit your protein target, it's pretty hard to go and consume more than that because you're so full. And so this is the reason why in a calorie controlled eating plan, we use a protein supplement. It's because it's really hard to get in enough calories enough protein without going too high in calories. This is the role of a protein supplement. But what I'm challenging you to do here is have a go at, over the holidays, saying to yourself, you know what? I can eat whatever I want. Like, check this out. I can eat whatever I want, but only once I have hit my protein target. What you're going to naturally find is, calories aside, you're going to be so full from protein that you won't really feel like eating all the extra stuff that you'd normally snack on because you haven't hit your protein target and therefore you're just not as full. Does this make sense? Now, to a lesser degree, the same thing can be said by increasing your fiber. The best way to do that is to consume a bunch of veggies. So what a lot of people do is at Christmas, they have kind of like half carbohydrate or noodles and pastas and that type of stuff, and the other part is protein. What you'd be far better to do is make up a good portion of your plate by eating your protein and your veggies first before you start to go into the more processed stuff. Again, if you do that, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to become so full on the unprocessed, high protein, high fiber foods that you won't really feel like eating all of the other stuff. There's a few other things that you can actually specifically do. Obviously, being active around mealtime is a good idea. One of the best hacks that I reckon you can actually do is get in the habit of going for a walk after you've had a meal. There is a lot of science now that shows that you increase the ability to metabolize that food by going for a walk quickly after you've actually had the meal. I don't mean walking quickly, I mean going for a steady walk soon after you've had the meal. It helps to get the movement through your digestive system. You've got gravity working in your favor, and it's a really, really simple way to help offset that feeling of like, sluggishness that comes with big eating. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, number whatever we're up to, bring a healthy dish. So one of the hacks that one of our great clients, Linda, always talks about is when she gets invited to a social gathering, she'll always bring something that she wants to eat herself, which is a better choice. I think this is such a great thing to do. A lot of us won't think like that because we think, we don't want to embarrass the host or whatever. But you know, in most times, the host is going to be grateful that you're bringing along something different. If you're putting your hands and you're wanting to control your calories, but you're going to turn up to, say, a barbecue or social gathering and you have no control over the foods that's at that, then you're putting what you consume into the hands of other people. So one of the simplest things you can do is obviously take a dish with you. Make it easy. For those of you that find yourself snacking a lot because you're hungry, one of the things that you can think about is, should I eat more regularly? So rather than going into fasting and then over consuming at the next meal, perhaps if you know you're the type of person that really gorges when you get hungry, it might be a better strategy for you to actually just eat a little bit more frequently and take the edge off that feeling of I'm now ravenous and I have to eat everything in sight. A few more tips for you guys. You got to think about where the highest calorie meals or meal items are going to be. For the most part, they're going to be the alcohol or the calorie-fueled beverages, and they're going to be the desserts, all right? So what you can do is you can obviously share your desserts or even make desserts with a sugar substitute like monk sugar if you're making them for your own house. It's a really, really simple exchange that cuts out a bunch of calories. The last two things that I want to talk about is I think that this time of year is very triggering for a lot of people. It's triggering for a couple of reasons. Maybe because you're with family that you don't spend a hell of a lot of time with, and that can be triggering. The second reason is because most of us that have kids, the kids are off school, meaning you've got them 24/7, and that can be really triggering as well. We end up stressed, we end up tired. That is the perfect situation for what? Emotional eating and drinking. So what we want to do is try to have some sort of plan in how we're going to dissipate this stress, knowing that we're going to be more stressed during this time than not. So if you don't have a stress reduction plan going into this, how are you going to manage that stress when it actually comes up? That's something to actually think about a bit more proactively and in advance. Okay, the final two things I think are worth mentioning here. Number one is to try socializing away from food. I think it's quite natural that food is the centerpiece of nearly everything we do, and that's beautiful and awesome. But there are other ways to connect which don't involve food being the centerpiece. Examples of this could include going for a bushwalk, or going to the gym, or going to the beach. To you Aussies, it's freezing over here in Canada. I wish I could do that. But this is an opportunity which is not based around food. And so if you're doing something that's not based around food, then obviously that's not the central piece. And if you're not indulging in that, then you can save the calories for elsewhere in the day. The final point is the one that I'm always going to talk about when it comes to our Better Body Academy clients, and that is that the single best way for you to eliminate excessive calories out of your diet is to consume a unprocessed whole food style of eating. I'm going to come back to what I said about hitting your protein targets first. If you are consuming mostly whole foods, you're hitting your protein target, these foods are so filling and they are not sweetened unnaturally with either sugar, or they're not made a lot tastier by a whole lot of added fat. And because of that reason, they are naturally lower in calories. So what's going to happen is consuming whole natural foods is going to be put you in a position where you're far more satiated. So if I look at my consumption over dinner last night, I was full, real full, and I probably overate. But when I think about the foods in hindsight that I overate, it was turkey breast and leg ham, moderate level of calories. I didn't overeat 150 calorie beers and creamy potatoes and refined pasta. And so even though I could choose to be really, really full off processed foods or really, really full off turkey and ham, being full off turkey and ham is going to contain probably half to 2/3 of the total calories that I would have consumed have I chosen to fill up on other options. Hopefully this, guys, makes sense. There it is for you guys. 10 to 15 quick fire ways that you can manage your weight over the holidays. Look, for our Better Body Academy clients here, nothing is different. Nothing is different. There's nothing about the holidays, apart from maybe the triggering of family, that's different. Certainly the approach needs to be considered, but it's not as if the old rules of calorie balance and hitting your protein targets don't apply. If you are in Better Body Academy, just trust yourself. You know how to do this. You've been doing it for a year or 2 or 3 or a few months at least. So trust your instincts, Pay attention to your satiety cues, eat whole natural foods, choose lower calorie options when you can. This isn't rocket science if you have a basics approach to nutrition. So guys, I'm going to love you and leave you there. Hopefully everyone is having a beautiful, beautiful, safe holidays. Hello from Canada to the rest of the world. I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.